the latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary King. In Berkshire, the westbound M4 looking very slow around junction 13 at Cheveley. It's not helped by roadworks. In Hertfordshire, the A1M northbound remains closed until the early hours of tomorrow morning for works between junction 6 at Welling Garden City and 7 at Stevenage South, still causing a few delays in the area. As a result, in Somerset, southbound M5 looking busy around junction 20 at Clevedon. Delays going back towards junction 19 at Portishead. Cumbria, northbound M6 has a lane closed for emergency barrier repairs from junction 39 at Shap towards 40 at Penrith, and in Renfrewshire the westbound M8 are looking busy because of emergency barrier repairs between junction 29 at Paisley and junction 30 at Erskine Bridge. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Want to be a winner just like Phil?
Obviously, whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
Enter our massive spring giveaway. There's £12,345 in tax-free cash to give your finances a spring boost. We'll also send you on a shopping spree with £500 worth of vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. You'll also get a garden gadget package. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dewbs & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Hello, good evening. I hope you're having a wonderful Good Friday out there. It's 6 o'clock and this is Dewbs & Co with me, Dawn Neeson, standing in for the lovely Michelle on this Good Friday. And another day, another Tory donor gets a knighthood. Do we need to reform the system or maybe scrap it completely? And then, I love the story, a pub in Cornwall has had its nomination for Camera Pub of the Year award revoked. But why? Because it had a swastika on display, but it was brought back from the World War II by a British soldier who wanted it in the pub as a reminder of the victory over the Nazis. Is context everything, or are some symbols just beyond the pale? And plus, talking the military stuff, the Army has got rid of a 100-year-old ban on beers. Is this the answer to the Army's recruitment crisis? More beers? Well, we have a proud owner of a beard on the panel, not me by the way, on the panel this evening, and he has some interesting views on that subject. And it is, of course, Good Friday, a time for most to have a day off, sit back and enjoy a nice hot cross bun. But what flavour? Chocolate, salted caramel, blueberry, or even bacon? Can I just have a normal one, please? Hello? People are kicking off left, right and centre about this. Are we desecrating an Easter tradition, or is it just a bit of hot cross fun? That's all to come in the next hour, but first, let's get the news headlines with Sam Francis.
Dawn, thank you very much, and good evening from the newsroom. Just gone 6 o'clock, and the latest developments in our top story of the day. The new interim leader of the Democratic Unionist Party has said that today's shock resignation of Sir Geoffrey Donaldson has been incredibly challenging. The departure of the DUP's former leader and longest-serving MP in Northern Ireland came after he was charged with serious historic sex offences. A 57-year-old woman has also been charged with aiding and abetting additional offences in relation to that same police investigation. Gavin Robinson says it's been a devastating revelation.
I think it's caused tremendous shock, not just for myself personally or my colleagues within the DUP, but for the community right across Northern Ireland. It came as a great shock. But we are a party and individuals that believe in justice. We have faith in our criminal justice system. And so in the coming days and months, I think it is important that none of us say anything or act in any way that would seek to prejudice what is now an ongoing criminal investigation.
As Dawn mentioned at the top of the hour, one of the Conservative Party's major donors has received a knighthood as part of a controversial honours list from Rishi Sunak. Mohamed Mansour gave £5 million to the Tories last year, and he's a senior treasurer for the party. He was knighted for what's described as services to business, to charity and politics. Other recipients included MP Philip Davies, who is also a former presenter on this network. The timing of the list is unusual, though, coming while Parliament is in recess and on the eve of the Easter bank holiday weekend. Police are appealing for help in their search for a man suspected of raping 2 women in London. The attacks took place 4 years apart, first in Westminster in 2018, followed by another incident in Shoreditch in 2022. Those offences were being investigated as separate crimes, but forensic work has helped to draw a link between the two. Detectives say that it's highly likely the suspect has also committed other attacks. The Metropolitan Force has released this e-fit image you can see there if you're watching on television, and they're asking anyone who thinks they may have information to contact police or call Crime Stoppers. And in other news, police have issued an urgent appeal to help them locate a disabled boy's specially modified van that was stolen from a family in East London. The Carriazo family's 13-year-old son, Elijah, has a rare muscular condition and survives with the help of medical equipment. If you're watching on television, you can see here this CCTV footage released by police of that grey Ford Transit custom van as it was being stolen in Hackney in the capital. It's used by the family to transport vital medical equipment for their son. Elijah's mother, Anessa, told GB News earlier that she's hoping it will be returned before her son's birthday, which she said could be their last holiday together.
It's not the van that you took, but it's our freedom as a family, his freedom as to whatever life he's got. He's got a limited time here, and we just hope that you pull something in your heart to look at this as not a material thing, but look at this as what you could give to Elijah into whatever life, whatever we could squeeze in to whatever limited time we've got.
Campaigners have criticised a series of promised reforms for renters, describing them as a charter for landlords. The practice of forcing tenants out of their home for no stated reason was to be abolished in what the government had described as a once-in-a-generation overhaul of housing laws. But a leaked letter from Communities Minister Jacob Young has suggested the bill may now include several concessions on behalf of landlords. The Renters Reform Coalition says that weakening the bill breaks the government's promise, leaving most renters still at risk of no-fault evictions. And to the US, finally, where the Wall Street Journal has published an edition of its paper with a blank front page, marking 1 year since their reporter, Evan Gershkovich, was jailed in Russia. The 32-year-old was detained last year on charges of spying, though no evidence has ever been presented for those charges. And despite President Putin's hints of a potential exchange, no deal has so far been reached. Here in the UK, meanwhile, the Archbishop of Canterbury has called on people across the globe to pray this Easter weekend for the jailed journalist. Those are the latest headlines. More in the next hour. In the meantime, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, it's back to Dawn.
Thank you very much, Sam. Welcome to Dewbs & Co with me, Dawn Neeson. Joining me until 7, I've got a brilliant panel for you tonight. Journalist and author Benedict Spence and trade unionist and writer Paul Embry. And, of course, this show isn't about them or me, it's about you. So you can get in touch about what we're talking about, what you want to talk about, anything. It's Good Friday, do what you want. All of that, it's very easy. gbviews@gbnews.com or on Twitter/X @gbnews. Now, Rishi Sunak has been criticised, again I know, for announcing a surprise round of honours which included 4 Tory MPs and a major donor to the Conservative Party. Mohamed Mansour gave 5 million to the Tories in 2023 and is a senior treasurer at the party. Labour's chair Annalise Dodds reacted to the news on GB News Breakfast this morning by saying this.
It seems to be an almost automatic pass now under the Conservatives, and particularly the individual Mr Mansour, who was last January, the biggest ever donor to the Conservatives, £5 million at that stage, the biggest individual donation that had been given, then seeming to have that automatic pass through to receiving an honour under Rishi Sunak. I think, if anything, it demonstrates yet again his weakness, that he's focused on internal party issues all of the time rather than on the needs of our country.
OK. Now, one of the 4 MPs to receive an honour, Sir Philip Davis, who represents Shipley, gave his reaction to Britain's newsroom on GB News this morning. I asked him what he thinks he's done to deserve the honour. A bit cheeky.
It's not for me. It's not for me to decide that. That's for other people, and people will have their own opinion about whether any honour is merited or not. And you only have to look at social media, and you'll see that some people think it's the best decision that Rishi Sunak's ever made, and some people think it's an absolute disgrace. And 'twas ever thus, I suppose. But it's not for me to say whether I deserve it or not, or what I've done. It's for, like I say, I did award it to myself.
Spoken like a true politician, didn't actually answer why he thinks he got a gong. I mean, you must know, surely. But this brings me to ask, do we need to reform the honours system? I mean, is it really, you know, giving gongs for your mates, basically? And, you know, who do we think deserves these honours? Is it people that are just mates of Rishi Sunak? Let me ask my panel about this one. Now, basically, at this time of year, Paul, most of us are giving Easter eggs to our mates. Rishi Sunak has to go one better and give people gongs.
Well, the whole system needs to be democratised, or it needs to be abolished, because this makes people very cynical about the whole honours system. How can it be right that someone gets a knighthood for having donated £5 million to the Tory party, and within a year he gets a knighthood? The idea that this has been given to him for his, you know, public service, for, as they claim, services to charity, and it is not in any way linked to the fact that he's given mega millions to the Conservative Party. The biggest donation the Tory party has received, by the way, for something like 23 years is arrant nonsense, and I think it's an insult to people's intelligence. There should be something like a time bar, I think, where major donors have given large amounts of money, whatever the limit should be, large amounts of money to a party, that they should be barred from, you know, getting a knighthood, being elevated to the Lords for a certain amount of time, whether it's 5 years, 8 years, 10 years or whatever, because the reason that they give them to them is because they're inviting more donations. The reason that Rishi Sunak is giving him, you know, the knighthood is because he wants to send the message to people, look, if you donate millions to the Tory party, then this is what you get in return. If you're a rich businessman and you're after being elevated to the Lords, or you're after a knighthood, if you're a woman, you want to become a dame, give us a few million quid and this is what happens. And the problem is it makes the whole thing seem completely corrupt. And for ordinary people out there, many of whom I would give a knighthood to far before I would give it to this person, I have to say. They think it's just the old boys network. They think it's, you know, you scratch my back, I scratch your back, jobs for the boys, that kind of thing. It makes people rightly very cynical.
Well, isn't this the problem, Benedict? Are anyone in the Tory party, Rishi Sunak, listening to what people are thinking and saying out there? This is the worst move in the world, especially seeing, you know, we had the dodgy donor story the other week, didn't we, with Frank Hester, who actually was the biggest donor, giving 10 million. Is he going to get a gong next year?
Do you think this is going to massively affect their polling, given how badly they're already doing? Do you think they care? I think this is the exact right moment if you're going to reward your mates, because you're not going to get back into office for a good few years.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? This is the other thing. Is it the timing, just before Easter? I mean, is it signalling that they know they're a busted flop?
I think think that this is a very good way of drumming up support in the short term, but also in the long term, given that the opportunities for actually handing out gongs are going to be very thin on the ground, to be able to say to people, well, look, you know, there are opportunities for you to get things perhaps in the future. It might take 10 years until you get your hands on them. But still, I think that this is a mechanism, therefore, for, as you say, potentially for drumming up support or for incentivising people. It's also, we've got to be clear, it is a way of incentivising people of getting involved in politics in a way who might otherwise not be interested. Actually, we're very good at excluding businessmen and women from this country, partly because the pay in politics is so poor. You need other things to incentivise people to get into it. And I'm afraid one of those things are things like knighthoods. Now, I would say that most people actually do accept that it's a bit dodgy, it's a bit rotten, but actually nowadays, most people do not really care if somebody is Lord Who's-it of Whatsittville. They don't. A title is no longer the sort of thing that carries any great weight because they're not landowners. They don't, you know, it doesn't carry sort of any great power. It is literally something you give to somebody who has given a political party a lot of money, to which most people would go, OK, I'd quite like being a knight, but I don't actually think that this is a great...
what it does is it adds to the whole perception of cronyism. And I don't think people are. As relaxed about it. As you say, I'm not necessarily suggesting that when they go into the polling booth on general election day that it's going to affect their vote at the ballot box. But it just gives the general impression that, you know, the Westminster elite are completely removed from us. They don't understand our lives. They don't understand people outside the M25. You've got Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt, who have got wealth beyond what most ordinary people could possibly imagine, and they're giving gongs out to their mates who are also mega multi-millionaires. And I think to ordinary people out there, while it may not be decisive on election day, it does add, I think, to the general sense of alienation and the general contempt that people hold the
general sense of alienation. But I just don't think it's that important a thing. You know, OK, let's give a nurse somewhere in Surrey or Wolverhampton, let's give them a damehood. Fantastic. Does that actually change their life fundamentally? No, it has absolutely no impact at all. It is of very little value, other than to say congratulations on doing a sterling good job. Now go back to work in the system that doesn't quite work.
If it's a nurse, they could just always pay her what she probably worth.
But this is exactly the point. What does a knighthood actually cost? It costs what you pay to a political party or what you put into the political system. Actually, if you hand a knighthood out to a charity worker, a nurse, or whoever, what does it actually do to improve their lives? Nothing. That's why I say most people will look at this and go, yeah, it doesn't really seem very fair. But ever thus was it. It's always been a way of rewarding the friends of the state, let's be clear, and it doesn't actually affect materially ordinary people's lives. You're right to say what is perhaps of more interest to people is saying, OK, great, you're giving this person a knighthood because he donated 5 million. What is your track record in government? What are we getting for that 5 million?
But the message is, Benedict, the message it sends is that we as a society do not value productive labour, that actually the nurse or the person who spent 30 years sweeping the streets is
or the lollipop lady, we always mention the lollipop lady.
The people who do really important, socially productive work in their community, commit to their community, give value to their community day after day, year after year, have got no chance for the most part of getting a look in. But if you're a captain of industry, if you work in the city, if you're the head of a financial institution or a bank, if you're a media mogul, then you've got every chance of getting into the Lords or getting a knight. And what it does is it speaks to the fundamental unfairness of our society and the fact that it is a class-ridden society. I mean, people like to claim it's increasingly a classless society. Actually, I think we're seeing more divisions.
I agree with you completely. But the honour system doesn't signify that. The fact that this is the fact that this is a country that is run entirely off of accumulated unearned wealth is actually the sign. Manifestation, but it is right at the bottom. And this is why I say what actually matters to people. Is it so and so getting a gong that says you're a knight now, or is it things like building houses? Is it things like building reservoirs? And that's why I say, OK, it's an irritant. But what I care a lot more about is saying, what do we get for the political donation that puts a party in government? I'm much more irritated by the record of the Conservative Party in government on their failure to do things than on whether or not they decide to hand out a few
I'm irritated by that as well, but I'm also irritated by this. It's like they're not it's just a waste of time. What is the point anymore?
I think what it does is it signals that Rishi Sunak knows he's probably not going to win the next election, and Benedict's probably right. Get all the gongs handed out now. You know, let's do everything now for my mates, because let's be blunt, we're not going to be around, you know, in the foreseeable future.
It's a politically expedient thing to do at this moment.
Well, exactly, and that's why Labour are going, yeah, well, you know, you're a busted flush, mate.
Yeah.
But that brings me back to Annalise Dodds, who was speaking to the Breakfast Show this morning, who was very critical, but stopped saying short that Labour would scrap the honours system, and the hypocrisy though was a bit much. Anyone remember cash for honours?
Yes.
Yes. this?
I remember it because my head teacher at my secondary school was involved in it, Desmond Smith, who was a very good head teacher, by the way, but he was exposed by the Sunday Times for being involved. He was an ambassador for the government, and he was exposed by the Sunday Times for having been involved in it, and he ended up in a prison cell. I mean, he was freed, but he was arrested and ended up in a prison cell. So I do remember it very well. But, you know, let's be blunt, that was cronyism as well.
But that's what I mean.
That was Blair elevating people to the Lords, his mates to the Lords.
Exactly, that's why.
But that's the point. That's how our political system has always worked, on a basis of patronage, and whether people like it or not. And it's very interesting, isn't it? Annalise Dodds did not say, yeah, we're going to sweep this whole system away. Why? Because they would like to utilise it themselves. Because for some reason, some people, when you get higher up in the echelons of society, I think some people do care about these things. The ordinary men and women of the world do not particularly care who is Lord, who is Dame, who is this, that and the other. It's nice if a sports person or a charity worker or a musician gets something because you feel that you've got some sort of affinity with that person. But the average, banker or hedge funder who gets a gong, actually, they don't know who they are. They don't particularly... Exactly, they don't care. No. And that's the thing. It's how you grease the wheels up the ladder. It doesn't necessarily affect people low down the ladder unless the greasing of the ladder higher up allows for a better political system. That is what we ought to be talking about. What have we got for the millions that Mr Mansour, or Lord Mansour as he is now, what he's actually put into the Tory party? What has the country in general got for that money? If it's just a gong, I would say that's a rather expensive gong. If it's helped with some sort of other policy that perhaps helps with house building or something, you might then argue maybe that's money that's worthwhile.
But the danger of that, though, Benedict, is you're then into the whole area of cash for influence, aren't you? You're into the area of saying, I'm giving you millions of pounds because I want to dictate policy. I want major influence over party policy and, by extension, government policy. So actually, by doing that, and if the government goes along with that and says, OK, we'll listen to you, we'll acquiesce to your demands, what does that mean for ordinary people who haven't got tuppence halfpenny and their only power is going into the ballot box?
Isn't that the point of a trade union?
Just quickly, don't go down that road. Just quickly, boys, one word answer, we're running out of time. If you were offered a gong, an honour, say Sir Paul, Sir Benedict, would you accept it?
Dukedom or nothing.
Working class boy from Dagenham,
It depends what I was being offered it for. If it was because I'd given a few quid, then I'd say no. If it was because of my, public service record and whatever, then I would consider it.
And I always thought Dame Dawn sounded quite nice, don't you?
Dame Dawn.
Right. It's not going to happen, is it? Coming up, a pub in Cornwall has got itself in hot water over displaying a Nazi armband, which they claim was given as a trophy by a British soldier who served in World War II. Are some symbols, though, simply just beyond the pale, or is context everything? Find out after this break.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Has the NHS killed your relative and then lied to you about it? There is an alleged cover-up culture in the NHS. They lie to you about why your loved one died, about poor care, then bury documents with evidence in them, and they try to silence staff who speak out. This is according to the NHS Ombudsman. There are around 11,000 avoidable deaths every year. 11,000. Someone's mum dies, their children know something dodgy happened, and then they're met with a rotten culture, including the altering of care plans, the disappearance of crucial documents, and complete denials. They lie to you, but they really get away with it because the NHS is like a religion and people dare not criticise it. You'd be accused of NHSophobia. The annual budget is around £180 billion and we now have about 2 million people working for the NHS. They cannot keep blaming everything on being underfunded and understaffed. If they're covering up medical negligence, it means the problem doesn't get dealt with and it keeps happening. And that is the fault of the NHS managers, the people who run it. They've got the money for 837 non-clinical staff working at English hospitals on the highest paid Band 9 contracts, which is between £99,000 and £115,000 a year. How many nurses would that pay for? How many junior doctors? And they've got the time on their hands to think about making the NHS the world's first carbon-neutral health service. They've got time to consider whether women in labour should be picked up by an electric ambulance that might have to be recharged en route to the hospital. There are NHS managers with a budget of £180 billion, 2 million members of staff, and they're crying about being understaffed and under-resourced. If they spent more time looking after patients instead of finding ways to cover up avoidable deaths, then maybe we'd have a better health service.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Patrick Christie's tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, a TV exclusive with former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, and he is scathing about Rishi Sunak.
Would you try to talk about legal immigration and it was just battered away?
Yes.
And sexual assaults are taking place in migrant hotels.
I did see some very concerning incidents, for example, at the asylum hotels, individuals committing sexual assault.
Also, find out why Queers for Palestine want us to boycott Eurovision, and is Ramadan more popular than Easter? Don't miss Patrick Christie's tonight, 9 till 11 p.m. Be there.
Hello, welcome back. This is Dewbs & Co. with me, Dawn Neeson, keeping you company until 7 o'clock. Brilliant panel with me, a journalist and author Benedict Spence, and trade unionist and writer Paul Embry. I have to call them both sir now after the last debate. Obviously, don't like, because they're going for their gongs.
Quite right,
and I'm afraid I'm a bit of a busted flush. But loads of you are getting in touch, so really keep them coming. GB Views at GB News, they're on your screen. You know, it's Good Friday. Message me. Talk to me. OK, now let's see what some of you have been saying. Rishi, Mike, good evening, Mike. God knows what time of day it is. Mike says Rishi should have knighted Boris. It's a bit controversial, isn't it? Meanwhile, this is one for you, Benedict.
Here we go.
This is from Ryan, new fanboy. Benedict speaking such truth. Great debate then. Thank you very much. Glad you're enjoying it.
Your money's in the post, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is he related?
Could be.
Yeah. Yeah. Meanwhile, Val says there are plenty of trade union leaders who've had honours and peerages from Labour for funding their party. It's not. Well, we did discuss that, didn't we? We mentioned cash for honours, which was Tony Blair and the Labour Party, which is why Annalise Dodds was being a teeny-weeny bit hypocritical there. And Jeff, you're on my team, Jeff here. Jeff says the whole thing should be scrapped, as it's always gongs for the boys. And even when it's gongs for the girls, I still think it's a bit of a busted flush now. Right, let's move on, shall we? This story is amazing, by the way. A pub in Cornwall has had its nomination for Camera Pub of the Year revoked. But why? Because it had a swastika on display. But it was brought back from World War II by a British soldier who wanted it up in the pub as a reminder of our victory over the Nazis. It was a good thing. We defeated the evil people. So, in that context, is that OK? Or are just some symbols beyond the pale? Let's come to you first on this one, Paul. I mean, if you'd have walked into that pub, and I have walked into that pub, by the way, it's a very lovely pub, by the way, and seen that Nazi, it's an armband, it's a Nazi armband with a swastika in it, and seen that, what would you have done?
I would probably have asked, if I was particularly interested, I might have asked the barmaid or the landlord or whoever was behind the bar what, there it is, we can see it in the pictures there. It's a lovely pub. Yeah, the story was behind it, but I would probably have assumed something along those lines would have been the case. I wouldn't have thought, especially seeing as it seems to be the case that there's all sorts of paraphernalia going on in that pub. I wouldn't have thought, I've walked into a bastion of fascism that's been here this whole time and nobody told me about. And I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing to display these things. I know that there are rules around war trophies and things like that, but a Nazi armband I don't think is the worst thing to have taken from a defeated enemy, to say this person's been defeated. But, would a French tricolour taken at Waterloo be beyond the pale? Would that be unacceptable? The French, killed an awful lot of people during Napoleon's wars. Where do you draw the line?
Well,
I think that this is perfectly acceptable.
This is the thing, isn't it? Paul, this time I'm going to look at you and say your name, Paul. It's a trick. But, this is the thing. Now, evidently one person complained, and the landlord reckoned that this person's never even been in the pub. This has been there for 80 years, by the way, and it's hidden in a very dark corner. You wouldn't even notice it. OK, but this one person has complained, and CAMRA have stripped the pub of its coveted Pub of the Year. But this has got to be an overreaction, surely.
You said it yourself, context is everything, Dawn. If this were flying from the roof, then it would be a different kettle of fish. It would be a different matter,
That's a fair
wouldn't
point.
it? You know, but it wasn't. It was presented in, you know, from what you've said, quite a tasteful way, as an item of historical interest inside a glass cabinet and so on. It's not like someone was trying to use it politically in any sense to offend the local community or to direct it towards certain people. It was a sort of thing, I imagine, that you would possibly see in the Imperial War Museum. I mean, there is stuff in the Imperial War Museum that was taken from the battlefields during the war, German paraphernalia and what have you. And if you saw that in the Imperial War Museum, presented in that way as a war trophy with a sort of write-up underneath it, I suspect that most people would not bat an eyelid, but it seems to me that someone has decided, for reasons we don't know but can probably guess, to take offence. And, you know, unfortunately, CAMRA, who I like, I think they do a great job, but I think they've called it completely wrong on this one. And they're just so quick. People are so quick. Institutions are so quick to jump to complaints where someone has alleged offence. We have to deal with it. We have to wield the sledgehammer, even when there isn't really any call for it. And that's what's happened.
I think that is a really good point. I mean, are we just becoming a permanently offended, whining, woke, complaining society where, oh my God, you can't have that, and then institutions react in that way?
I mean, it is the strange sort of juxtaposition that on the one hand you might have a swastika armband, which of course denotes memories of the Second World War and the Holocaust and all the horrors that came with that. But at the same time, we seem to be reaching a stage where historical illiteracy on the subject of the Holocaust is at an all-time high over the last 80 years, where actually people seem to be moving away from the idea that it was some sort of unrepeatable nightmare and seem to think, actually, it's something that you can use as to sort of link to any conflict that you like. This is genocide, this is fascism, this is awful. You know, so actually, when it comes to the subject of people being offended by it, I'd say, ironically, given that this country's post-imperial history is almost entirely predicated on we were the ones that defeated the fascists, that makes us good people. The average person is moving very much away, I think, from their understanding of what true Nazism was and what it was that we were fighting against, and it's just become a catch-all term for I don't like this, I find this offensive.
Think of that famous photo where all the German soldiers were doing the Nazi salute, and there was that one guy in the middle, very famous photo, who was refusing to do it for his own reasons. Now, that photo, understandably and rightly, has been shared around the world, and people look at that as a thing of historical importance and say there's a really important political message there, despite the fact that there are dozens, possibly hundreds of people doing the Nazi salute in the photo. And that's the point about context being everything. You would not ordinarily want to see a photo with lots of people doing the Nazi salute. You wouldn't want to parade that photo. You wouldn't want to circulate that photo. But in a particular context, such as look at the guy in the middle who's not doing the Nazi salute, I think it's a really good thing that it is circulated.
There's two things going on here, I think. I think you're completely right there, Ben. It's diluting. When we use words like you're a Nazi and sort of Holocaust, and we're forgetting what they actually mean. But on the other hand, we're also, by taking things like this down, we're in danger of not being able to learn from that past.
I think it's important to say that we didn't go to war against the Nazis so that 80-odd years later we could find ourselves in a situation where people's language and thought and demonstrations and history can be policed quite so aggressively without any kind of recall to context or anything like that, where somebody simply calls up and, you know, dobs you into the police or to the authorities or whoever and says, this person is displaying something that is verboten, that is not allowed. And the police go, or the camera go, or whoever it is go, yes, you're right, they're not allowed, they will be punished. That sounds a little bit like we're going off in a certain direction, which I thought was the antithesis of where we were supposed to be.
Think of the Charlie Chaplin film, The Great Dictator, where he parodied Adolf Hitler brilliantly. I suspect that no one would be brave enough to do that today. And if somebody were to do that today, then their career would probably be destroyed, because the very mention of Nazism in a kind of funny, comical way would be seen as unconscionable, I think, in today's society. And that's, you know, we've got to I think we've got to be able to mock the Nazis. We've got to be able to laugh at them. We've got to be able to parody them. And we should be grown up enough to understand the context when somebody does that. We're not talking about people doing it in a way that venerates the Nazis or in some respect that pays homage to them. It's about context, and we've lost when it comes to investigating complaints and people taking offence. We've lost context, and I think we need organisations like CAMERA to be a bit braver and to say, do you know what, we're not going to do anything about this. We've looked at the situation. Don't be silly. Grow up. There's nothing wrong here. This is not some neo-Nazi pub landlord who's trying to peddle hate.
No.
This has got to be taken in context, but we don't have institutions brave enough to do it.
The hole in the wall in Bodmin, if you're passing, by the way. Meanwhile, keep getting in touch. This is a lovely message from Alison. Good evening, Alison. Alison says, my father was given a gong for his service to the fire brigade. He did not give money to the political party to earn this. I was extremely proud of him.
Good.
So that's a really nice message, Alison, because, I mean, I'm getting a bit cynical about it, and it's just, gongs for the boys type thing, just, hand over a few bob and get it. But they are given to people that have really given their all. So exactly like your dad. So thanks for that message. Appreciate that. Right, we have to move on, unfortunately. Coming up, the British Army has had its beard ban lifted by Royal Command. Is this the answer to the recruitment crisis? Don't go too far.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Always. As we go through the rest of this Easter weekend, for most of us we've continued to see the mix of some sunshine but also the risk of some rain at times. It's all courtesy of this area low pressure which is going to hang around as we go through the next few days. But with winds coming up from the south, it should feel a little bit less cold. So as we end Good Friday, still the risk of some showers across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, maybe western fringes of England and Wales, but elsewhere turning clear with the risk of a few misty patches forming come dawn and also a touch of frost in the countryside. So we do start Saturday off on a bit of a chilly note, but some sunshine from the word go. Risk of a little bit of cloud and patchy rain just reaching the very far east of England. And the main focus of any showers tomorrow will be, again, across more western and northern parts of the country. But there should be a little bit fewer and further between compared to today. Temperature-wise, in the sunshine, not feeling too bad. Highs reaching around 14 or 15 degrees. Having a look at Easter Day, a bit of a cloudy start across many eastern parts, but that will burn its way back towards the North Sea. So for many, again, it's another day of some sunny spells, risk of a few showers, potentially a little bit more in the way of persistent rain just arriving in the very far southwestern corner. And that sets us up for a bit of a north-south split on Monday. Rather grey and wet in the south, but hanging on to the sunshine further north.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary King. In Hertfordshire, the northbound A1M remains closed until the early hours of tomorrow morning. It's due to works between Junction 6 at Welwyn Garden City and Junction 7 at Stevenage South. Long delays on the approaches. In Wales at Monmouthshire, the westbound M4 looking busy between Junction 23A at Maygood Services and Junction 26 at Malpas Road. In Lancashire, the northbound M6, long delays there around Junction 33 at Lancaster South. The northbound M6 in Cumbria, still a lane closed for emergency barrier repairs between Junction 39 at Shap and 40 at Penrith. And in Renfrewshire, the westbound M8 are looking busy because of emergency barrier repairs between Junction 29 at Paisley and 30 at Erskine Bridge. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. This is Dewbs & Co with me, Dawn Neeson, and keeping me company until 7 o'clock is a journalist and author, Benedict Spence, and trade unionist and writer, Paul Embry. Some of your messages coming. I love these. Please, just keep talking to me. It's Good Friday. You haven't got much else to do, have you? May as well have a chat with me. Anna, this is a very interesting point, and thank you for giving the balance. We were talking about the Nazi armband, the swastika armband on display in a pub. It was from the war. It had context. But Anna says, I think it's completely inappropriate, considering its historical connotations. But is it about the context, Anna? Meanwhile, Mary, a point I think all three of us made here, if they'd put a little note underneath it saying, lest we forget, there should surely be no complaints, I wouldn't be that convinced of that, to be honest with you. Meanwhile, Carol says, lots of ladies here, Carol says, oh, for goodness sake, it's just memorabilia. But not in the memorabilia, sort of like, you know, a gold disc or something. I mean, a context, a reminder that we defeated the Nazis. Surely a good thing. Right, OK, now we're going to talk... I've got an expert in the studio with me on this one. It's been set in stone for 100 years, but now members of the British Army can have, beards. It's all be with some strict length and style rules. It's not easy to understand. And it has to be signed off by the King's approval. But we have a recruitment crisis in all of our armed forces. I think the Navy's suffering more than the Army, but, I mean, all the same. But, you know, is this the way to go? Actually allowing people to have beards. Now, let's go to our beard expert. Hello, Paul, you've got a beard. What do you make of this?
I think it's a sensible decision. I think unless there's an operational reason, a good operational reason not to allow it, and I have to say, I don't think there is. I think the argument in the Army has been done to death. They've been arguing this for years, and they've come to the conclusion that actually there isn't, other than in specific circumstances, a good operational reason for generally banning beards. Then I think it's a sensible thing, and of course with Sikhs, for example,
of course, yeah,
they make adjustments to make sure that Sikhs can serve in the army, and other people who may through religious reasons wear a beard. So it seems to me, and beards are a bit back in fashion anyway, as you can tell. Obviously, me being the height of fashion, I wouldn't be wearing one otherwise. So it seems to me that with the cultural thing, more and more men wearing beards, and if we want men to join the army, and we say, well, you can't if you want to wear a beard. That seems to me to be a ridiculous
when we can't get enough people to join the army in any case.
Well, exactly.
But you mentioning during the break about how, as a firefighter, you couldn't have a beard for practical reasons.
Correct. When I was riding fire engines, I'm still in the fire brigade, but I've got a desk job at the moment, so I can get away with it. But when I was riding fire engines, you have to wear breathing apparatus when you're going into a fire, and you have to wear a face mask, obviously. And if you're wearing a beard, then there's a chance you might not get a perfect seal on the face mask, in which case, obviously, smoke can leak in and so forth. So there's a good operational reason in the fire, and this is a good example. In the fire service, there's a good operational reason for frontline firefighters not wearing beards, but I don't think that applies to the army.
No. I mean, and I'm not being funny here, Benedict, but I mean, you know, we've got Putin letting rapists and murderers out of prison to go and fight in the Ukraine, and we're worried about people having a beard?
I mean, it's interesting because you mentioned we've got a recruitment shortage, but as you said, the number one shortage, the most acute, seems to be in the Navy. Well, it's always been allowed to have beard in the Navy. In fact, it's encouraged for many of the same reasons, actually, that in the Crimean War, soldiers were encouraged to have beards, because it'll keep you warm, which is an interesting fact that actually around about the same time that British soldiers in the Crimea were being encouraged to grow their beards because it would keep them warm, members of the Russian court were being told to shave theirs off because having a beard didn't look very European. It looked a bit too barbaric. There you are. There's a little bit of history.
Go on, and this is a bit of history that you know about as well.
It's also, yes, it gives the impression, as you can see there, those are members of one Highland regiment or another. I can't see it. It's in black and white, I can't tell by the tartan. But the idea, looking slightly different from the average British redcoat here, was to make yourself look as sort of wild and impressive as possible in the face of the enemy. And actually, it did work, actually. Highland soldiers had a ferocious reputation across the world. They did very well out of the Empire, for all the Scots like to say that they were the colonised. But I think when it comes to the issue of recruitment into the armed forces, this is, as you say, this is a sort of a passing fad. The beard's currently being back in fashion. I don't think that that's going to persuade somebody to make an entire lifestyle choice, because signing up for the army is very much a lifestyle choice in the truest sense. It can take your whole life, so to speak. I don't think that somebody who is perhaps facially endowed, so to speak, when it comes to the beard, is going to look at the new recruitment person and go, oh, fantastic, the armed forces are clearly for me, because I identify very strongly with the fact that you can now grow out your facial hair. Nobody's going to make that decision. Ultimately, it doesn't address the operational issue.
Hold on. So the Scots Guards have big, bushy ginger beards to be intimidating.
King Charles, actually, King Charles, when he was in the Navy, there's a photograph, not many people I suspect have seen it, but he was the commander of, I think, a minesweeper called HMS Bonington. And
Prince Philip, you mean?
No, King Charles.
Oh, King Charles.
Yeah, he was in the Navy, and there is a photo of him wearing a beard in his Navy uniform on board, I think it was HMS
Because the Navy is
Bonington.
different, wasn't it?
The Navy was different.
Yeah.
I don't exactly know the reasons for that. It may be because they needed to save water and they didn't want people shaving every day on board a frigate or an aircraft carrier or whatever. But yeah, traditionally, people, it's a very common thing, isn't it, to see people in the Navy with beards.
But this new policy is ridiculous, right, by the way. It's like, but there are very, very strict rules. The length must be between 2.5 millimetres and 25.5 millimetres, which is an inch, basically, in old money, and must be trimmed off the cheekbones and neck, and there must be no patchy or uneven growth and no exaggerated colours.
Again,
huh?
This is presumably the reason that they kept this ban in place is it's about discipline. It's about keeping people making them look uniform. It's so that there's no sort of individuality. So if you're then going to allow beards, and then you've got to bring in all of these new different sort of regulations, well, you're going to have the drill sergeant going up and measuring them whilst they're on parade.
But at the same time, you wouldn't want to see the band of the Royal Marines marching out and they've all got big, wild, bushy beards, would you? I mean, you wouldn't be able to see their trumpets for a start. But there needs to be... I think
that wasn't a euphemism there, was it? No.
No, before the watershed talk. No, not quite. But I think there does need to be some discipline around it, because otherwise they can grow wild and unkempt, and that wouldn't depict the.
I mean, quickly, because we're running out of time here. But I mean, the recruitment shortage, as we know. But there've been, all these woke adverts for sort of like people who can't even pass the fitness tests.
I was going to say, when we're getting closer to a war, because the adverts suddenly stop being about diversity and anybody can do anything in the Navy or the Air Force, and suddenly it becomes about we need men to kill people, blow things up. You'd be very good at this. That's how you know that we've moved from a peacetime army to one that might actually have to be deployed somewhere.
Come and fight, have a beard. See the world, grow a beard. Right, still to come. It's Good Friday, but have you been able to locate a traditional hot cross bun? People are kicking off left, right and centre about the plethora of different flavours available now, including, I'll tell you after the break, okay. Does it demean the values of Easter? Let me know, but don't go too far.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Now, the massive debate back across the pond is NATO. Yeah. Everyone's talking NATO every day. It was your comments about them not paying enough, not paying 2%. And you said this, you said it again recently. You made a comment, well, the Russians can do whatever they want if these guys don't pay. Well, that's now being used.
Well, they can use it. I don't really care if they use it, because what I'm saying is that's a form of negotiation. Why should we guard these countries that have a lot of money? And the United States was paying for most of NATO. And when I went there, and I already had it out with them, and now they stopped paying again. But now they're paying because of those comments that you saw 2-3 weeks ago. The question was asked by the head of a major country in front of everyone else, 28 countries at the time, including us. They said, so if we don't pay our bills, are you going to protect us from Russia? I said, you mean you're delinquent? You're not paying the bills? Yes. Nope, I'm not going to pay you. We're not going to do it. We're not going to defend you. If you're not paying your bills, we're not going to defend you. It's very simple. And hundreds of billions of dollars came flowing in. Now, if I say, yes, I am, they're not going to pay their bills. Why would they do that? NATO has to treat the U.S. fairly, because if it's not for the United States, NATO literally doesn't even exist. But they took advantage of us, like most countries do.
If they start to pay their bills properly and the club is fair, are places like Poland defended? Will America be there?
I believe the United States was paying 90% of NATO, the cost of NATO. It could be 100%. It was the most unfair thing. And don't forget, it's more important to them than it is to us. We have an ocean in between some problems. It's more important for them. They were taking advantage, and they did. They took advantage of us on trade, and they took advantage on
So if
the
they
military.
play fair, if they start to play fair, America's there.
Yes, 100%, 100%.
Thank you.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. This is Dewbs & Co with me, Dawn Neeson, on a Good Friday night. And keeping me company until 7 o'clock is a journalist and author Benedict Spence and trade union.
Whoops.
And trade union.
Couldn't wait.
Couldn't wait. And Benedict has just said to me, he goes, "Oh, I can't eat a hot cross bun live now. I won't be serious, will I?" And we've just caught him swigging a pine at work, honestly.
Didn't touch the side.
But
I'm a fat person in a slightly less fat person's body. Just read the script.
Yeah, don't look at the nutrition.
You can identify as a thin person.
I just want to read. Oh God, honestly, what have we started here? I just want to read this this email out, and this one is on the subject of beards in the army. This one's from Mark. Hello, Mark. Is that beards are only ever frowned upon by people who can't grow them. Well, that's me, although I could have a go, I guess. Or is having a go at you?
You don't frown upon them, Dawn. You said off air, you like beards.
I like a man with a beard.
Wait until November. You'll see my moustache again.
Oh, excellent.
It does make an appearance.
Right, OK. Well, as you can probably see, Dewberry Tavern is open. Benedict might have given that game away. And I'm serving until Michelle gets back. So cheers, have a good Friday, and I hope you're having a smashing weekend out there. Now, it's a time for most of us to have the day off, sit back and enjoy a nice hot cross bun. But what flavour? Chocolate, salted caramel, blueberry, cheddar cheese, bacon. I'm not making this up, people. People are kicking off left, right and centre about this. Are we desecrating an Easter tradition, or is it just a bit of hot cross bun? Right, which one have you got a mouthful at the moment?
I've just swallowed some blueberry. It was all right. The chocolate was better.
Is that a euphemism? I don't know what Easter are on tonight. Paul, let's come to you first. You haven't got a mouthful, have you?
I haven't. I'd never let it be said GB News is not a model employer. I mean, hot cross buns of different varieties and a pint of German lager on a Friday evening. I cannot imagine any other media outlet would treat its guests and its
Right, OK, but I'm going to tell you...
Weird combination, to be honest, but not an unpleasant one.
You don't get this on Question Time, do you? Right, let's go for the chocolate one first. Go on, have a mouthful of that one, see what you reckon.
And what was that? Chocolate hot cross bun. I mean, that's stretching it, isn't it?
That's wrong. Now...
It sounds wrong.
Talk amongst yourself.
It sounds wrong. I think it tastes wrong, actually.
That one actually comes with a health warning, right? I mean,
not surprised.
Even though they're called hot cross buns, no, not the nutritional content, even though they're called hot, you can't actually heat that one up that well. Because if you put it in the... it actually says on the packaging, Nanny State warning, by the way, don't put this in the toaster because it's got chocolate in it and it'll melt. And the same applies to the caramel one, which is this one here.
That doesn't, for me, have any semblance of a hot cross bun. That's more like a bit of chocolate cake, actually.
Yeah,
the chocolate takes away from the whole kind of...
That's a bit sticky, that one.
Yeah, sounds like a design flaw.
But we'll just leave you to it, shall we, Ben? If you want to...
He can review all four.
This one was really good. This was the classic, and it is very nice, yes.
Yeah, that one's nice. But, I mean, it's not just the buns, right, that we're messing around with. You can also get hot cross bun-flavoured cheese now, and hot cross bun
flavoured cheese, not the other way around.
No. But you can actually get hot cross buns with cheese in them. And look, I did some research, obviously. I'm a serious journalist here. Salted caramel chocolate, we've got blueberry, sticky toffee pudding, lemon and white chocolate, anyone?
That's nice. I've had that. That's nice.
Oh, have you? Sounds a bit weird.
No, that's really
lemon
nice.
And chocolate and raspberry.
Lemon drizzle's nice.
Yeah, lemon. Well, yeah. Easter donut hot cross buns. Anyone? Chili cheese hot cross buns. Now that's a winner. Fancy that, boys?
Oh, who came up with that?
Not me. I'm just reading it out. Mature
you people
cheddar
are
cheese.
depraved.
Oh, this one stands up your straight, seeing if you drank half your beer already. Rum and raisin. Why can't you just get a hot cross bun?
Rum and raisin ice cream, but I'm not sure about rum and raisin hot cross bun.
Well, they've got salted caramel. It's fairly similar. It's got rum in it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've tried now all three apart from the classic, and the blueberry and the caramel's good, the chocolate not so good.
Yeah, well, that's a classic.
But for me, the classic is
still.
It's got a cross on it as well.
It's the flagship hot cross bun, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not got a tick on it. It's actually a cross.
It can be sweet. It can be had by itself. You can put
You are hungry, aren't you, by the way, Bennett?
Yeah.
You've not eaten all day?
Not really, no.
No.
He wants seconds. Are there any more?
when we pan over there, I'm going to steal.
Right, yeah, because everyone's going, oh, go and eat. Well, I'm talking. I'm actually supposed to be working here. But you know what? It's not actually just hot cross buns I had a problem with. It's Easter eggs, OK?
Why?
You know, like getting an Easter egg in an egg shape. You know, call me old-fashioned, but
they're called gesture eggs now, aren't they?
Well, that was in one shop. To be fair, come on. I mean, that was a story over nothing, really. But actually getting an Easter egg that's shaped like an egg, you can get dog-shaped eggs. You can get cat-shaped eggs.
This is
caterpillar ones. You can get. I had one a couple of years ago that was shaped like an aubergine even.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah, because it was sold by Marks and Sparks. Other supermarkets are available, but it was for vegans and vegetarians.
So that was the upmarket.
But it was, yeah. I was going dead posh.
I suppose it's better that these are just shaped like these things rather than flavoured like these things.
Yeah,
that was clearly the next logical step in the marketing.
You wouldn't want it flavoured like a dog or a cat, would you? That would be.
Depends what part of the world you're selling these things.
Some people might like.
How hungry are you exactly?
Oh, you have no idea. I'm going to enjoy this long weekend of eating and drinking, especially seeing as it's being given to me for free.
Exactly. Right. OK. Have we got any messages coming in about hot cross buns?
I think they're just horrified. The viewers are just staring at us, just thinking, what is wrong with these people? Who are these gluttons that are just ploughing through?
Yeah, no, it's...
But I have to say, even though I don't like the chocolate one particularly, it's being washed down nicely by the German lager. That is
it's a good
impressive.
Combination, isn't it? Yeah, no, lots of people are going, oh my God, that is disgusting. But I mean, it's look, on a serious note, right? Have we lost all our Easter? We've just, everyone's been discussing to the blue in the face our, the tick hot cross bun and the Ramadan lights down Oxford Street at the height of what is officially, obviously, the most religious Christian festival of the year. So we're joking about this, but are we losing traditions in this country, do you think, Benedict?
I think so. I think, to be honest, I don't think there's anything wrong with celebrating Ramadan in parts of the country where there are large Muslim communities. I think what grinds on people is that there is the celebration of Ramadan and no apparent celebration of Easter at the same time. It's almost as if Christianity is sort of dispensable. In a sort of a way, I feel that almost people look at, as we sort of get Christian festivals more sort of commercialised and more secularised, they are therefore more disposable, and actually they can be shunted to one side. Whereas I think a lot of Christians are looking at what's happened this Easter and going, hang on a second, no, my religion is still the largest one, it's still the cornerstone of many aspects of this society. Why is it that this can be shunted to one side? And I mean, as you say, we're sort of joking about the commercialisation of hot cross buns, but, whilst these are not, there's nothing in the Bible that talks about hot cross buns. They are something that were invented at some stage in order to shift things and in order to have something to celebrate. But they're not religious.
Pagan times.
Yeah, they're not sort of Christian. They're not sort of hardline part of any sort of Christian theocracy. At the same time, I do feel that a lot of Christians feel that their faith and their holiday has been slightly cheapened in much the same way as Christmas has as well.
I think there's a danger that as a society you become so tolerant and so inclusive to the extreme that what you do is you end up losing your own identity. You end up losing that common thread, that common identity, which has sustained you for in our case, hundreds of years. And I think that's the path that we're taking.
Well, unfortunately, on that note, we have to go. We're running out of time, so you can tuck in, boys. So just a lovely thanks to Paul Embry and Benedict Spence, who are enjoying their buns and their pint. Next is Lee Anderson. Don't go too far. You don't want to miss this.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Meteorist. As we go through the rest of this Easter weekend, for most of us we've continued to see the mix of some sunshine but also the risk of some rain at times. It's all courtesy of this area low pressure which is going to hang around as we go through the next few days. But with winds coming up from the south, it should feel a little bit less cold. So as we end Good Friday, still the risk of some showers across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, maybe western fringes of England and Wales, but elsewhere turning clear with the risk of a few misty patches forming come dawn and also a touch of frost in the countryside. So we do start Saturday off on a bit of a chilly note, but some sunshine from the word go. Risk of a little bit of cloud and patchy rain just reaching the very far east of England. And the main focus of any showers tomorrow will be, again, across more western and northern parts of the country. But there should be a little bit fewer and further between compared to today. Temperature-wise, in the sunshine, not feeling too bad. Highs reaching around 14 or 15 degrees. Having a look at Easter Day, a bit of a cloudy start across many eastern parts, but that will burn its way back towards the North Sea. So for many, again, it's another day of some sunny spells, risk of a few showers, potentially a little bit more in the way of persistent rain just arriving in the very far southwestern corner. And that sets us up for a bit of a north-south split on Monday. Rather grey and wet in the south, but hanging on to the sunshine further north.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Gary King. In Wales at Monmouthshire, the westbound M4 looking busy from junction 23A at Mega Services towards 26 at Malpas Road. In Hertfordshire, the northbound A1M remains closed. Long delays due to works until the early hours of tomorrow morning. It's between junction 6 at Welwyn Garden City and 7 at Stevenage South. Cumbria northbound M6, there's a lane closed for emergency barrier repairs between junction 39 at Shap and 40 at Penrith. Renfrewshire, the westbound M8, so queuing at the moment due to emergency barrier repairs between